Now, I believe that this particular comic isn't out yet. It's going to come out at the early of September. And this is supposed to hype you. It's supposed to persuade you not to buy manga, not to support actual diversity from Japanese people. And instead, you should save your money and purchase something from the Americans. People on the internet have found this to be a little bit amusing, not gonna lie. I personally have absolutely no more feelings towards it, neither positive nor negative. I do wonder though if it's going to sell. Because what used to make comics great was a main focus on the story and a main focus on the battle between the villains and the superheroes and the extraordinary powers that they would use. However, America seemed to move away from that because they looked at something successful and they realized that they don't want to make money anymore. And instead they're focusing on the identity of the superhero. And obviously, there is a limit to that. You know, you go on the progressive stack and you do pretty much everything until you have to, I suppose, move into this realm of bewilderment. And I don't know who this comic book is for. I suppose they will say it's empowering for people in wheelchairs. And don't get me wrong, people in wheelchairs is definitely a serious issue that should be addressed, and it's something that it can affect all of us. I mean, even myself or yourself at one point can have the misfortune of being in a car crash or suffering from a debilitating disease, and we can find ourselves in a wheelchair. However, if that was the case, do you know what I would want? Like, do you know what my hopes and aspirations would be? It wouldn't be to shoot spiderweb out of my crutches. No, it would be to walk again. So I don't know who this comic book is for. Again, I don't know if every person in a wheelchair has the desire of walking. I mean, maybe there are people who are born with a debilitating conditions and they don't want to walk again. I have no idea, okay? I can't speak on behalf of that. And maybe people at Marvel like have one activist and he got the honor of speaking on behalf of every person in a wheelchair around the world. But I would suggest that instead of that, they make a poll or a survey. And they see what people in wheelchairs actually want. Because I guarantee to you, it's probably not this. And not only that, it looks ridiculous. I mean, look. There are an army of people that will look at the Power Girl costume and will say, oh my god, that's such an impractical costume. They would look at Wonder Woman's costume and it's like, oh, so like when she's flying, aren't her tits vibrating in the air? Like, the physics, right? That's what they care about. The physics of the superhero female costume and the practicality of it. And they don't ask, it's like, well, when this lady is doing this, now, allegedly, she can't move her legs. So how exactly is she swinging in this position if she doesn't have any control in her legs? I mean, we are supposed to build realism into comic books, right? Because it's like, oh, the armor of the female character, what does it protect? Now, before listening to the professionals, to the experienced ideologues raising these life-altering questions, I never cared because it's a superhero, you know, like, who cares? But apparently, no, you have to ask these things. You have to deconstruct. Okay, let's start deconstructing then. Why is this character changing her positions if she can't move her legs? Secondly, there are characters in comic books that are done incredibly well. For example, Charles Xavier. I mean, he's in a wheelchair, and it's a very interesting character because his strength isn't that of physical ability. He is a very intelligent character. He uses his mind. And he is a very powerful telepath. So, you can actually make superheroes that have certain conditions. But you need to actually have good writers that know how to write them. And unfortunately, I don't think this is it, Chief. There's other superheroes as well. Like, for example, Batgirl. Now, Batgirl was the type of hero that used to do this. However, she gets shot by the Joker. She ends up being in a wheelchair. And you know what? The writers decided that if they keep her doing this, it would look ridiculous. So instead, what they decided to do is to have her at the computer become a good hacker and help Batman and the team from behind the computer. Like, she's now planning the operations. She's now doing the investigation. She became Oracle. So it's not like you can't have, like, if you really want to have superheroes in wheelchair, you can have them, but they need to be done in a proper and tasteful manner. This is not tasteful. This is not proper. This is ridiculous. Like, if this was a comedy, sure, but even then it would probably be distasteful. Like, why are you making fun of this? Doctor Strange, another example. He experienced a car crash, and then he lost control of his hands. Like, he can't move his hands anymore, so he can't be a surgeon. So it's part of the struggle that he has to learn how to use his hands again, and then he uses magic and stuff. You can also have a superhero that has like an exosuit, and they power out the exosuit and they start walking, right? Like, you can do these things. I mean, it's not that I'm against it, but at the same time, it's just that it looks ridiculous. Like, let's be honest, it looks freaking ridiculous. And then, of course, you know, the politics, right? The American flag as a dress. You know, isn't this type of politics a little bit over that? Just a little bit. Because, like, every single comic book, you get to see it. I mean, read manga for the change, right? How often do you see the rising flag in it? Or how often do you see the Japanese flag in a manga? How often do you see a religious symbol in a manga? Like they're trying to keep it to a minimum. Like, I get it, you know, this is Marvel trying to show that they are very progressive in their comic books, not when they're marketing stuff to China. When they're marketing stuff to China, they're incredibly regressive. I mean, the Spiderman game, which apparently had the pride flag removed and replaced with a hate symbol, which is the American flag, that sparked a controversy. But no one wants to talk about the fact that the same company, when marketing the same game to the Middle East, had the hate symbol of the American flag being placed in the game instead of the LGBT flag, which is how the modder actually managed to mod the game, right? No one talks about that for some reason. Because this is what corporations do. This is why I find this cringe. I do not for 1 second believe that the corporation at Marvel supports LGBT people. I don't believe it. I genuinely do not believe it. So this is pandering. Like, that's what they're trying to show. It's like, oh, the actor is so progressive. Oh, look, it's like... And it's the only type of politics around, right? Like, you're not going to see this lady having an American flag, for example, as a dress or something like that. Or a MAGA hat. Or like anything that supports Republic. Like, there used to be a time when superheroes were both left-leaning and right-leaning as to not upset the readers, right? Because they wanted to be inclusive. So, like, comics are for everybody. So if you're a right-winger, you can have, like, some right-wing superheroes. If you're a left-leaning person, you can have some left-leaning. No, now it's just full-on left-leaning. But not only that, like, just the most extreme, fringe, radical left-leaning positions imaginable. Obviously, I'm not talking about this, but I'm talking about, like, no borders. Superman wearing a COVID mask, even though it makes absolutely no fucking sense because he's an alien. There was another picture with Superman at an environmentalist rally where a person next to him was holding up a sign saying there's no planet B, even though Superman is from a planet B, even though DC Universe has alternate dimensions. Right? Like, this is the problem when people say, oh, you're pushing politics. You're pushing politics at the expense of the lore, the story, and the immersion. That's the main issue. Like, you don't care if the lore fits. You don't care. Just, for example, with She-Hulk, her complaining to Bruce Banner, it's like, oh my god, well, I'm getting catcalled on the streets. Do you not know how difficult life it is for me? And Bruce Banner apparently was chased by a general. Witnessed his mother getting beaten to death by his father. Tried to kill himself with a shotgun, but because he's the Hulk, he didn't die, right? So you have to ignore all of that. Like, you have to pretend that didn't happen for that conversation to make sense, but it does make sense for the progressives. And this is why people don't read American comics. Like, this is why people read manga. You don't have to put up with that shit in manga. And it doesn't look that ridiculous. But anyway, right, let me know what you guys think. And if you like my content, there's a tip jar. And right there. Tip jar. right, in the comment section, right there.